Your reference to Lincoln brings back Doris Kearns Goodwin's team of rivals, in which Lincoln reached out beyond his own political self-interest, appointed people who were not only his rivals, appointed people even who wanted to replace him in the very next election, but because they had ability, he brought them in, even if they were not of his political faction. And somehow that standard of greatness has to be met again.
And his vice president was a Democrat.
Exactly. Senator Hart?
Most Americans would respond to the question, what kind of government do we have, by saying a democracy. And yet, 220 years into our history, all of us salute the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands. And the founders purposely created America as a republic and knew what they were doing. Because, as Senator Cohen has said, in a democracy we protect our rights. In a republic, we all have duties. The two factors in all republics since the ancient Greek city-state have been citizen duty, citizen participation, what used to be called civic virtue. Today, we are bringing democracy to the Middle East and losing American lives in the process, and an amazing number of Iraqis could tell you that 50% of the American people do not vote. So we cannot be the beacon of democracy in this country when our citizens don't even perform the most elementary duty of a republic and the right of a democratic citizen. The second factor is a sense of the commonwealth. We all are members of interest groups, and we want what our interest group will give us. But what brings us here is that we want leadership, and we want citizens to demand leadership that talk about and serve the national interest, not interest group interests, and the commonwealth, all that we hold in common. And when we get that leadership, we will solve the problems we're here to discuss.
Thank you very much. I know in speaking about our obligations that the panelists have mentioned, one of our obligations clearly as citizens is to not only ask questions and to speak out, and particularly those who want to bring us together to speak out as moderates and as centrists, but also we must educate ourselves. And I know that that's something that needs to happen. We are very poorly informed on those issues that are really going to determine our future. How many Americans know, for example, that at the current rate of spending on our entitlement programs, Medicare, Social Security, interest on the debt, that all of our tax revenues we now collect are due to be consumed within the next decade or so just from those sources. Senator Nunn has talked about having an educational program that is brought, I know, through CSIS and other groups. I know Senator Graham has also talked about bringing educational forums to campuses and to the public to go in depth to talk about issues. That's something else that we hope this group can do in a bipartisan fashion and be an engine for education. Senator Nunn, would you want to comment further on that?
Bill Cohen and I are going to launch a series of discussions under the auspices of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which I chair in Washington. John Hamre, former Deputy Secretary of Defense, runs it. But it's a think tank where you have a couple of hundred scholars that are involved very much in analyzing national security, economic, and foreign policy issues. So we're going to have a series of discussions where we chair those discussions with the help of the Howard Gilman Foundation, and we're going to get the best thinkers we can around the country, not simply from politics, from business, religion, nonprofit, and tackle some of these issues. Not because we think there's going to be thousands of people or millions of people watching, but because at least we're going to put it out there where we get the best thoughts to talk about how we ought to put meat on the bones in terms of addressing these fundamental issues that affect our country. So we're looking forward to that. And Bob Graham had a great idea. He discussed on the plane coming out. He can elaborate. But the idea would be to really challenge the universities all over the country to really start having these kind of forums, pick out the 7 or 8 issues, start talking about what Susan Eisenhower says so well, is we have to have a strategy, we have to have priorities. How do we fit all of this into a coherent whole? I think those are enormously important undertakings, and so we're going to see whether the media is interested and see whether the public's interested. But at least we're going to do it. My father was big conservationist long before we had an environmental movement. It was soil conservation when a whole lot of our land was blowing away. And he was a great steward of the soil. He's also a steward in the Methodist Church. And I've heard him say many times that we don't just inherit our great country from our fathers and mothers. We borrow it from our children. So we are not just beneficiaries. We are participants and citizens in passing on this nation that we love to the next generation. At this point in time, we have a challenged stewardship, and that's what I think we all acknowledge and are willing to start working on.
Thank you very much, Senator Nunn. And I have three other members of the panel who wish to make a comment. I want to ask Senator Graham to add to that. His name has been mentioned about his hope that the universities will become involved across the country, then Senator Hagel, then Governor White. So, Senator Graham, we'll begin with you.
When public education was established in America in the early part of the 19th century, the fundamental reason was to prepare our people for citizenship. When George III was kicked out of America, there was a sudden realization there is no king or other ultimate leader. We, the citizens, have that responsibility, and many of we the people, weren't particularly well prepared to accept that citizenship responsibility. I think education in America needs to return to that concept that one of our fundamental, not peripheral, fundamental responsibilities is preparing our people for citizenship. For universities, great universities like this, and I want to say I particularly admire the fact that President Boren teaches a class every semester on the issue of citizenship for those students at this university who are fortunate enough to be in his classroom. I think we ought to, one, use the universities as an important forum for the discussion of these issues, challenge students to be creatively involved in solutions and means of getting those solutions involved, because they're going to be the ones in the not-too-distant future who are going to be making those decisions. Second, we need to, throughout the curriculum of the universities, reinvigorate the concept of citizenship. I'd like to have an evaluation, check all the graduates of the University of Oklahoma 5 years after they've graduated and find out what their score is on citizenship. What percentage of them are registered to vote? What percentage of them have been actually voting? How many of them have been participating in the organizations that constitute the civic life of our nation? Those are some of the challenges. This is not an issue exclusive to politicians, certainly not exclusive to just presidential candidates. As has been said, we are all in this together, and great institutions like the University of Oklahoma will play a key role in our ultimate success.
Thank you very much, Senator Graham. And I might point out, unfortunately, and I'm glad to say the University of Oklahoma is not one of those that fail to require American history and government to graduate, but over 80% of the nation's universities no longer require a single course in American government or American history to graduate from the university. So we have a real crisis of citizenship, and I think you put your finger on it. I have three others who wish to comment generally on this issue: Senator Hagel, Governor White, and Mayor Bloomberg. So I'll call on Senator Hagel next.
Thank you. Now that it has been established that I'm a Nebraska Cornhusker, I'm actually here looking